Hello and welcome to Money Tips. Rightmove have reported that house prices fell in July at the highest July fall in over 20 years. I'll be talking more about how prices are steadily falling, especially in the London area. Uh, Another thing that's falling is the economy. We seem to be just not growing or growing slightly below into negative territory. And the numbers of millionaires and billionaires are falling in the UK because they are leaving, and unemployment is going up. That's about the only thing that's going up seems to be unemployment. However, we have signed a great trade deal with India that's been in the offing for 2 or 3 years now. I think Rishi Sunak must be wishing he'd stayed on and signed this historic deal, because of course he comes from an Indian background, and he must have really wanted to get this deal over the line, but it now is over the line, which should be good news for British exporters. So let me just share with you the screen on property. Okay, you can see here that house prices have seen a big drop in July, and it's actually the biggest July drop in 20 years. The average asking price of a home has dropped by 1.2% this month in July 2025 to 373,709, and it's the largest July drop. So that they do this month on month based on the monthly drop, and so it just happens that it's the biggest in 20 years. But that's a significant drop. It's not a huge drop, I mean, in terms of the percentage, but London has seen the biggest regional fall of 1.5%. Driven by inner London in particular, 2.1%, which is interesting because I was talking to somebody last week who is selling a property in a posh area, Maida Vale, which when I lived in Camden as a kid, that was the posh area, and we used to go car washing in Maida Vale, and sometimes meet some celebrities there who would wash their car for, what was in those days like 50p or a pound or something, and then we'd go away, and the next day on the Sunday we would spend that money by going on buying a Red Rover ticket, which gave us unlimited access on the buses. So we'd go all over London, and I think we were only about eight years old, 9 years old. We used to roam around everywhere. It was unbelievable. Anyway, getting back, that I'm going off piece a bit, but getting back to this, this person is trying to sell a flat in Maida Vale, and she's struggling to get 850,000 for it. It's in a nice mansion block in a nice road, and it's one of these large big mansion block flats with communal gardens, and she's struggling to get 850,000 pounds. Now she paid for this flat 950,000 pounds. Okay, so she paid 950,000 pounds and she's getting 850,000 pounds. When do you think she bought the flat? It was actually 15 years ago. So 15 years, and she can't get what she paid for it. Now, of course, you might look back and say, well, that was at the peak. She bought at the peak, but you'd expect that the peaks and troughs would be, that the troughs would be outrun by the peak. So yeah, you'd get an up and a down and an up and a down. But that's not good news, and it's not the only anecdotal bit of evidence I've got that things are slowing in London. Someone else I know had a down valuation on a property in quite a nice part of London, East London, where they film The Only Way is Essex, and this property was down valued, despite the fact that similar houses 2 years ago and 4 years ago were selling for more than the surveyor said it's worth today. And then we challenged it, or they challenged it, and found that, well, actually the surveyor has got recent activity showing that the figure is about right. Properties, and talking to properties in central London, estate agents in central London, they say the market has softened. It's taking longer. In fact, there's almost a glut of properties on the market. Some of them don't want to take on too much new stock. So here it says that, Rightmove are in the property business. They've got to talk the market up. They said activity remains strong. Sales agreed 5% higher than last year. So yeah, and we're talking about London here, but London's not the only part of the market. There's 90% of the market is outside of London. But that is, we expect that every month prices are going up, not dropping. So just go up here, we'll see that inner London 2%, 2.1%. Of course, in inner London, you've got massive properties, multi-million-pound properties. So it only takes a few of those to go down, and then you've got a big drop. Of course, last year's increase in stamp duty for investment as for second homes has affected the market. Changes to non-dom tax rules, which I'll talk about in a while, and uncertainty around the market has made a difference as well. And a lot of non-doms are literally selling up. But around the rest of Great Britain, Northeast, which is the least expensive part of the UK, or England anyway, has seen a rise, a 1.2% rise this month. But therefore, you might have a property worth 50 or 60,000 pounds, so it's gone up by 1%. But nevertheless, it's a lot of investors are putting the money into the northwest and the northeast because they can't seem to get the returns in London. Now, there also seems to be at the same time a shortage of rental properties, but rents don't seem to be going up. Now, I covered this, not in London anyway. And I did an article on this recently. Is it a good time to move? Is it a good time to buy? You can see on my YouTube channel. But for buyers in the current market, there seems to be more room for negotiation. Definitely buyers are a bit more brave in saying, well, look, I want a 10% discount. So it might be a good time to buy. If you're ready to buy, it's not, I wouldn't say buy because it's a good time to buy, but if you're ready to buy and maybe you're a first time buyer or a second time buyer, this could be a good time to pick up a bit of a bargain. But of course, if you're selling as a second time buyer, you might be on the receiving end of a good negotiation. But we've got rates, mortgage rates are slowly coming down. We would expect the Bank of England to drop base rates when they meet next month because of the worsening economy. So we'd expect that they'd want to drop base rates, but it's only going to be 0.25%. And then what does that make? I mean, for the lenders, it's hardly worth changing their rates. Some of them change the rate before the announcement is made, and then they don't put rates up, so rates down. But what banks certainly do is when rates go up, they immediately put up all their rates on overdrafts and credit cards and mortgages if you happen to be on a variable rate mortgage. So yeah, we're seeing some good mortgage rates. Right, we've say we've lowered our price prediction for 2025 from 4% to +2%. So to reflect the large numbers of homes that are for sale, blah blah blah. So they expect 1 million transactions to take place in the UK. So they're saying that where they were originally predicting that prices would rise by 4%, now they're saying 2%. So so there you go. And then it quotes people. The estate agents say that there's a significant number of property choice available for buyers, and that is true. There also another agent told me there's a lot of HMOs on the market, houses in multiple occupation, and whereas a year ago he was trying to find HMOs for his clients to buy, now he said he's got a glut of them. Either landlords are selling up or they're going into leasing them out to local councils and authorities or companies like Serco to asylum seekers, which is in the news also at the moment. But there seems to be a lot more HMOs either coming off the rental market or being sold on to other investors. So that's another bit of anecdotal evidence. On the subject of HMOs, I did another YouTube. You can check out my channel, Charles Kelly Money Tips Podcast. Give me a like and a share and all that sort of stuff, and subscribe. But you can see another podcast I did on Nigel Farage saying that he was slamming the idea of people putting asylum seekers in HMOs. But at the same time, here we've got a riot taking place, or certainly over the last few days in Epping, riots have taken place, and loads of police were involved, and they were rioting because one of the hotels there, the Old Bell, has been used for asylum seekers, and that was tolerated. But then one of the asylum seekers allegedly did some sort of sexual assault on a girl, or tried to suggest something sexually to a 14-year-old girl in Epping. He's been apprehended and charged, but he denies the charge. But then that set things off. It was like a tinderbox. It was all just bubbling under, and it's just gone off. A lot of older people are saying, well, we can't afford to heat our homes. The government cut back on the winter homes allowance, and we're struggling. We can't afford to stay in hotels, and yet asylum seekers are put into nice hotels, some of them even 4-star. The government have now requisitioned another hotel in East London, in Docklands, in the Britannia. The Britannia in Docklands, which is a 4-star hotel, and that's been requisitioned, apparently costing something like 30,000 a night. They've requisitioned the whole hotel. And that will be used as an overspill. But a lot of the asylum seekers go into RAF, the former RAF Manston. But when that's full, they start putting them into hotels. And the government have said they want to close down the hotels. So where does that leave them? That leaves ordinary houses. That leaves HMOs and other properties that people will rent out to asylum seekers. They're not going to have them running around the streets, and they're not going to put them in tent city like they do in France. So, and at the same time, these people are not going away. I think even if they get their asylum claim refused, which is unlikely, they're not going back to Afghanistan or somewhere in Africa. They're just not leaving. Even if the government say they're going to crack down on illegal working, because a lot of them are doing deliveries and Deliveroos and Amazon drivers and all that sort of stuff, self-employed. Even if they crack down on that, which is going to be difficult, really, the people are not going to leave, and the danger is they might then turn to crime. But I've seen it on the streets of London. There does seem to be a lot of dodgy looking characters around. People think, what's going on here? It suddenly has changed in the last few years. Things have changed on the street. So the government's got to get a grip to this, and try and not only stop people coming in, which they're failing to do. They're up 50% on last year, but try and remove some of those who shouldn't be here. In the meantime, they've got to house them somewhere, and that's where probably HMOs are going to come in, and that's why I think a lot of landlords are leasing their properties to companies like Serco, Mears, and that sort of thing, to put asylum seekers in those properties. Whether it will be a backlash from the neighbours, I don't know. I mean, a friend of mine sources these properties and sorts out the lease agreement. He does the conversion, any building work needed, and then he liaises with the company that will lease the property. It provides a very good service, actually, and then sets it all up so landlords can move their properties from a normal rental situation into a HMO. And of course, another reason for the landlords moving over their rental properties is the Labour's Renters' Rights Bill, which is scaring a lot of landlords. I was at the National Landlords Show recently, and there are a lot of landlords who are fed up with it. Some are sticking with it. Some will say, well, we'll just work with it. But it is frightening a lot of landlords into either selling up and retiring or moving their properties into a company let, a lease, or holiday homes, which is going to put pressure on the rest of the market for people who just want to rent a home for a year or two. So there you go. That's the house situation. On the UK economic front, every day there seems to be bad news. This is from the BBC, which is a left-leaning organisation that sends to support Labour, but they're saying, well, look, UK vehicle making hits lowest level. Higher borrowing costs adds pressure on Rachel Reeves because she's borrowed so much money. And inflation jumps to 3.6 as food prices rise. And a couple of weeks ago, they were reporting that GDP was down, which we probably won't be able to find here. But the jobs tax or the increased national insurance on employers has also meant that a lot of employers are laying people off. I've reported on that. This is maybe an interesting one for you. How much money does the government borrow, and does it matter? Well, of course it matters, because taxpayers here are eventually paying that back. The government haven't got any money. They either borrow it or get it from us in terms of tax revenue. Let's see if we can find a table here. Government borrowing. This is just for June, right? Oh, 20 billion. Just for June. I mean, it's like having a massive credit card and just going over, using that credit card to live every month. So it's just incredible. The overall national debt is 2.7 trillion. And look at that number, 2,700. It's like 2,000 million. Is it 2,000 billion? Yeah, 2,000 billion. It's an incredible amount of money. And the interest on that is more than they spend on things like education. How much money does the government pay in interest? Does it give it here? Yeah, the interest was in June 2025. Interest payments on government debt rose to 16 billion pounds, 16,000 million pounds. Can you imagine that? 16,000 million pounds. If you had a billion, you could live on that forever. And this is 60. I mean, they throw around billions like it's just confetti. So of course it matters. And America's even in a worse position. There's talk that they're going to revalue gold and wipe out their debt, but I don't know how that is exactly going to work. But for Britain, they're in a bit of problem because if their tax take goes down and businesses are not paying so much tax and people are not paying so much tax because there's more unemployment, then and they're also at the same time borrowing more, and it's like a vicious circle. And don't forget, a previous Labour government, not the last one, but the one before that, with Jim Callaghan in charge, they broke the country, and they had to go to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, cap in hand to get a loan. Now, can you imagine the embarrassment of that in the 1970s, when Britain was, a former British Empire that ruled three-quarters of the world and was once the wealthiest economy in the world, then having to go cap in hand to the IMF. And when the last Labour government came out of power, they left a note in the Treasury. This was Liam Byrne, who was the Treasury Minister, and left a note saying, "Good luck. There's no money left in the Treasury." And of course, then David Cameron used that very note in his election campaign when he won the next election. So yeah, it does matter. And when inflation is going up, that also is affecting us because everything is costing more, and the value of your savings are going down. Because this is the quarterly economic comment here from the government. Main points: real gross domestic product increased in the first quarter by 0.7%, but it's been going down month on month in the second quarter. GDP per head increased by 0.6%. So that's the gross domestic product per head is barely moving. And yet you look at China's figures, they've grown at 5 and 6%. So this is the productivity of the country. It's not going up. So people are not getting any better off. Of course, the wealthy people with assets are getting better off, but people on salaries and who don't have assets are not feeling better off, and they can feel it in their pocket, so you do feel it. And then it says here the consumer price index CPI 3.4% in May, while core inflation was 3.5%, down from its peak at 7.1%. But I want to show you another figure here, which is the inflation figure, which takes into account, includes the consumer prices index and the house price index. It includes household expenditure. Now that is 4.4% now, 4.1% in June. So this is more like the real rate of inflation. And then, the CPI is calculated on a basket of items, but it seems like all the items I go to buy in the supermarket are always costing more. And we know how much things have doubled and trebled over the last few years since I think mainly since the Ukraine war. Things seem to have gone up so much. So that's that figure for you. And let's look in the consumer price index here, just to confirm, on the ONS, the Office for National Statistics. Yeah, I think we've seen that one. Yeah, I mean, that's just a table. You can go and look this up yourself on the ONS website, it provides all the official figures for the government. Now, I want to go on to the non-dom situation. These are non-dom rules in the UK, has existed for hundreds of years, where wealthy people could live in the UK and not pay tax on income derived from outside of the UK, which I think is fair enough. If you've come to live in the country, why should you pay tax on income that you've derived in Russia or India or America, when that income is already taxed anyway by the other government? But anyway, Labour said, no, it's all these rich people living in the UK, let them pay their fair share. Let them, they've got the broader shoulders. We want to get their fair share. They always talk about fair share when they're talking about taxing the rich. And this is just, we've had people leaving. We've had Charlie Mullins, the Pimlico plumber, leaving, but I think he left before this anyway. And you've had Lashmi Mittal, one of the richest men in the country. He's gone. He used to own British Steel, or owned British Steel. And this particular billionaire says Britain has gone to hell. And he's listing the house, in case you're in the market, for $337 million, which is almost 300 million pounds in London's Chelsea. This is him. He looks a bit strange, doesn't he? He looks a bit like a Bond villain there, doesn't he? Maybe he's got a super yacht where he's planning to, take over the world. But so I'll just get rid of this. Yeah, that's him. Okay. So he said he's fired more than a dozen domestic employees and is arranging for discreet viewings of the 30,000 square foot mansion known as the Old Rectory in Chelsea. It was one of the most expensive properties in the UK. Estimated 250 million pounds, includes 10 bedrooms, a ballroom, 2 acres of land in Chelsea, right? 2 acres of land in Chelsea, the third largest private gardens in London. So he said he's blaming the abolishment of the non-dom tax status, which previously allowed non-citizen residents to only pay British taxes on the money they earned in the country. And that's the reason he is leaving, and many others are leaving the UK. So he said he's going to the United Arab Emirates. The entire Western world is on its way down. And that's from a billionaire. This is not just some guy down the pub. This is a billionaire who knows his stuff. He also closes London headquarters of Sea Tankers Management, one of his private shipping businesses, earlier this year. So you can see already that jobs are going, right? Jobs have already been lost. Not just the 12 domestic staff, but the people working in his London offices. And this is happening all over. We're seeing lots of empty properties around. Let's have a look here. The BBC. Yeah, another report here says the end of the UK non-dom regime could erase billions in revenue, says a CEBR study. So what they're saying here is that Rachel Reeves' decision to remove tax exemptions for non-doms and also increase taxes for wealthy people here as well, and they're even talking about a wealth tax as well, could cost 12 billion over the term of the Parliament, and that's another hit to the revenues that the government want to take in to pay for everything that we need. So if you think, her idea was that it's going to raise money, but we all knew this, that people nowadays can say, well, no, we're not going to pay it. We're going off to somewhere else. We're going off to Dubai. We're going off to, some island in the Caribbean. There's so many choices now, and even within Europe, there are choices of places to go where there are lower taxes and where they feel welcome. So I think she's going to have to rethink this. But personally, I would just rethink her. I think she needs to go. She's not doing very well on the economy. Of course, I've had some good news today with this, with the news about the India deal, the India trade deal. But every other day there's more bad news on the economic front. So this is going to cost the government money, which means it costs everybody money. In the end of the day, it will cost everybody, all of us, money, because it's a loss to the taxpayers. It means we'll all end up having to pay more tax to cover the loss that they're going to suffer from this. And the argument of the Labour government is that all these rich people should pay their fair share of taxes, but in actual fact, the rich pay most of the taxes already, and they don't seem to get this. And it's a very idealistic way of thinking. It's a very left-wing socialist way of thinking, and even to the fact that say, well, not many are going to leave and let them go, good riddance and all that sort of stuff. I see it in the comments. But if you look here, top 50% share of income, people, as you can see here, they pay 90% of the tax. The top earners pay 90% of the tax. So yeah, you've got a lot of people at the bottom. They think, oh, we're paying all our taxes, but they don't pay much tax. The first 12,500 is tax-free anyway. So a lot of lower paid workers hardly pay any tax. So they're drawing from the economy, because if they've got 2 kids at school, that's 10,000 a year. That's more than they're paying in tax sometimes. I know people complain, but it's the middle classes and the higher earners, the successful people, the top lawyers, the doctors, they're paying huge amounts of tax, and they are leaving as well. They are, and that's going to be tragic, because they are the young people, the successful people, the educated people, the high earners will be getting out. And I can guarantee this will happen. It's happened before. It was called the brain drain, when in the 60s and 70s, the Labour government then put up the highest rate of tax at 90%. And there were not only celebrities leaving, but there were lots of successful people. And it took years to recover from that because these are people, the country runs on people. People buy stuff, people make stuff, people start businesses. And if you lose those sort of people, then the country is going to be in trouble. So you can see here the top 1% pay 28% of the tax. That was in 22 to 23, 22 to 23. And you see it's gone down now. It's expected to go down in 25 to 26 to 26% of the tax take. So you can see the percentages are going down. But the point I'm trying to get over here is that the top 1% of earners pay nearly 30% of the total tax take. And these billionaires, the idea that the billionaires don't pay tax is just another fallacy, really, because they do, and we've seen it in some of these figures here. So the overall situation here is that house prices slowing, might be a good time to buy. The economy is in a bit of trouble in the UK. It's not growing, and it looks like tax takes could be lower, causing more problems for Rachel Reeves, who will have to borrow more money, and that will put pressure on everybody. It will put pressure on interest rates as well. And we know that these non-doms are leaving. That the idea that they don't pay tax is just nonsensical. They do pay tax. Believe me, the non-doms do pay tax. They pay a lot of tax in the UK, in fact, billions, and that is going to diminish when they leave. I'm not saying everybody's going to leave, but significant numbers of people are leaving the UK. I'd love to hear your views. Let me know in the comments what you think and whether you think it's a good thing or whether you think Labour should change its thoughts on how they are taxing the rich, because they're definitely scaring them and businesses, because the corporation tax here is high. Their net zero policies are causing us to have much higher costs for electricity, for electricity and gas for manufacturers here. So they are leaving as well. To me, it just seems like a disaster waiting to happen. So thanks very much for listening. Sorry, it's not good news, but I will see you again on the next podcast. Thank you very much.